The Australian Grand Prix was the best race of 2023, and I have my analysis and biggest takeaways really to take from this Australian Grand Prix. We probably had the closest grid we've had so far in the 2023 season, with Red Bull not being too far ahead and a lot of teams fighting in the midfield with some insane crashes and big time really calls, both the rules and the red flags that were being thrown out. Before I start that though, I want to talk about my biggest surprise, as in who was the best and which team I think outperformed its car. As for biggest surprise, it should come to no surprise that I think it's Lewis Hamilton. He definitely had the performance of the day, I would say. Him keeping that P2 and not letting Alonso get that close. Always staying out of DRS, that took a lot of skill. Made no mistakes throughout the whole entire race. Really showed why he is still in the sport and why he's not retiring anytime soon. And really had a very fantastic race, I would say. As for the team that I think had the best performance, I wouldn't say Mercedes, only for the reason of it being, obviously, George Russell's car died out, so that didn't help for that. Hamilton himself had the best performance, but wouldn't say Red Bull because Checo, obviously in qualifying, murked it. Ferrari had a good car, but I would say Aston Martin had probably the best performance of this race and was very close to Red Bull. I mean, so far in race pace, they're only 5/10 off. If Hamilton wasn't in front, maybe we could have gotten a better bit of a battle. If Alonso was able to catch into Verstappen's DRS, I mean, they're still missing a lot of top speed, but I would give them the best performance as a team. Thank you guys all so much for supporting on all of my videos and really liking and subscribing. And if you are not, please like and subscribe. It would mean the world for me. It really shows your support and matters so much to me that we are doing this well. We are so close to 1,000, so thank you all. Let's get back into the video. Now we're gonna go into each team, taking their biggest takeaway and some analysis for each team. We're gonna start off with Haas, who I think was a big surprise for really the rest of the grid. For Nico and Kevin Magnussen, Nico was ahead by a whole 6/10, almost 6.5 on Kevin Magnussen in the race. And I would say that Nico had definitely the superior race and was very fast. Almost getting a podium if he got very lucky. The car was quick on the straights, but was also very well in putting down its downforce and very good in the slow and medium speed corners. It caught me a little bit off guard. I kind of expected them to be top speed monsters, but they were still really good, while also maintaining a good downforce in the car. We do know that their DRS efficiency is the best on the grid with Red Bull, actually, believe it or not. So Haas really did outperform this car, and especially in Nico. Definitely giving this to Nico over Kevin, and Nico had a great race. Good job for Haas for making a decent car and probably on pace with the Alpines. Gasly had the better race, but if Nico was up there, maybe it would have been a lot closer. Guess we'll have to find out throughout the season. As for Williams, I don't actually have an average race pace between the two because Albon crashed out on lap 6 or 7. I want to say it was 7. And for that result, there was no actual race pace to be calculated. But the Williams car did not perform well here. Obviously, their downforce played a factor. I think Alex was pushing just a little bit too hard in that second sector because he knew that was the sector he needed to stay ahead. But he would have caused a big DRS train. The biggest takeaway I can really take for this Williams team is there is hope for this car, and I genuinely believe that they could get a solid couple of points throughout the season. I think Logan didn't have a great performance. That crash into Nick de Vries at the very end was silly, but I think he will improve a lot. He's still a rookie, and I feel like a lot of these problems that he's having are really setup problems, which will come through the season to be a lot better as he becomes a more mature driver. So let's not doubt on Logan Sargent just yet. Now let's talk about AlphaTauri, the team actually I had going into this weekend to be the worst. Yuki, I'm making a separate video for Yuki actually. I gotta talk about Yuki's season and the pressure this guy's been under and how he's been performing. But that aside, expect that during this week. Yuki was up on Nick de Vries by 4.5 solidly. Yuki was having a great race and really outperformed, I think, that AlphaTauri. It seems like their floor upgrade actually did bring some tense in performance, but they still have a lot of drag. In that sector too, they were a sitting duck. And apparently Yuki had a problem throughout the whole entire race. Still managed to get a P10 and almost could have gotten even a P5 if it wasn't for that restart. So Good job, AlphaTauri. The car seems to be getting better. The biggest takeaway is that they are good on their slow speed cornering, but that is about it. The car is getting better, and I hope that AlphaTauri can actually make its way up. Nick DeVries did not have the greatest of races. I think his strategy was weird. When everybody pitted onto hards, he pitted onto mediums. I don't know what they were thinking there. Logan and him did the same thing, so I think that really screwed their race after was the first red flag. Wasn't a great call. Now for the Alfa Romeo team, who I think probably had the slowest car going around Australia, which is pretty crazy that they were even slower than AlphaTauri. I think they were though. Guan Yu Zhou actually beat out Bottas by 2.5 tenths. Guan Yu's really shown himself off. I think he's really performing well this year, and it looks like he's pretty much on par with Bottas, if not a little bit ahead in the race. In qualifying, it's still pretty close. Bottas had that great Bahrain performance, but it's nice to see Zhou actually get a couple points already on the board with that P9 and actually be able to perform a little bit better this year with a car that's a little bit more reliable. They haven't had any reliability issues as of yet. Bottas had like complete damage in Jeddah, so I can't really rate that race. But for Australia, Bottas did not have a great race, and he knew it himself, didn't say really anything on the radio. But biggest takeaway for Alfa Romeo and the analysis I can really give on the car is this thing is slow and super draggy, and that's really killing them on Sector 2, and Sector 1 wasn't even really that great either. This car needs a lot of work, and it's not very well balanced as well. Let's go on to Alpine, one of the top 5 teams. Almost. Maybe Haas is a little bit better this race. Gasly had an amazing race. Ocon was far behind, stuck in a DRS train, and really couldn't get himself to get up to where Gasly was. It sucks to see that both the Alpines crashed at the very end. I think Gasly was having an outstanding race, and this would have been probably one of the best performances of the day if he actually finished the race. With him not concluding the race, it sucks that we have to rate his performance lower, but the car was quicker, and like I said, that car is just a pretty balanced car. They just need to keep improving the car on really everything it's already got. It's just well balanced everywhere. It's good slow, medium, and high speed corners. And its top speed is not bad, meaning that that Renault engine is doing pretty well. Pierre Gasly was up about 3 tenths on Ocon in race pace, so Gasly is definitely showing he is here to stay and to compete with this Alpine team. Next team I'm moving on to, which is my favorite, is Aston Martin. How do I think they performed? Well, I gave them performance of the day in Australia, and Alonso was only 1.8 tenths above Lance Stroll on race pace, showing that Lance is quick. Lance has been great so far this year, and I love what I'm seeing from Lance. Definitely a big improvement, and seems to be very consistent in these first 3 races. And for Lance, consistency is the most important thing. A 3-4 finish is amazing. Sure, it would have been a 3-5 if Sainz didn't get the penalty, but even a 3-5 would have been outstanding. And good job to both Aston Martin boys. Really, the biggest takeaway I can take from here is their top speed is atrocious. Their rear wing upgrade didn't come, so that's expected in Baku, and we got to see if this rear wing upgrade will genuinely bring them that DRS performance that they need to find, because sure, it is a downforce monster, but the car isn't performing on the straights like it needs to be, because straights are really important, and if they can't have that top speed, they can't overtake. And I think that really lacked, and you could see with Alonso on why he wasn't catching Hamilton. Hamilton was able to have that straight line advantage. For McLaren, a big surprise. I called it out in my last video if you watched the pre-race analysis that I really had for Australia. I thought both cars were actually going to finish in the points, and I was correct. Sure, a lot of carnage happened for that to happen, but Lando was great. Outperformed Oscar by 4.2 tenths, which I expected Lando to be this much higher on race pace. I mean, this is the Lando that I was expecting to see. Oscar did have a pretty decent performance. He was behind for sure on Lando, and you can tell by the race pace discrepancy. And also just throughout the race, Oscar was never really close to Lando. Sure, Oscar did actually qualify a lot lower and had a couple of great overtakes, but Lando was definitely superior and really had that amazing overtake on Nico towards the end of the race where he really had to put in his car, because the biggest takeaway, and a pretty well-known one, is this is the draggiest car on the grid, and they really need to improve that top speed. So let's see if Baku brings that top speed advantage that they really need. As for the Ferrari boys, there is no race pace that I can take out of this. Oh, man. But on the bright side, here's the biggest thing that I can talk about Ferrari. It'll be simple and short. They were better everywhere in this race. I mean, in downforce, in their tires, the way that they were able to perform that strategy, they were good. And Carlos had an outstanding race, except for the very end. I mean, I believe that 5-second penalty to be a little too harsh, but I guess still kind of fair. I mean, he did hit him and practically ruin Fernando's race. But here's the thing, that lap didn't count, so I don't see why Sainz should deserve to actually get a penalty for it. That's my biggest argument for it. But as for Ferrari, they've improved, and I'd like to see what they bring in Baku, because that's where we can expect some upgrades, and Imola is where the big package is coming. I'll have a separate video for Ferrari. As for Red Bull, well, I mean, Red Bull, obviously the top team. Max Verstappen was up about 3.5 tenths on Perez, and it showed. Verstappen was ahead, he had clean air. Perez made amazing overtakes, and I would say by far had the most amusing race to watch, and went for overtakes and spots I didn't think were really possible on this track, but wow, turns 9 into 10 are a beauty to watch. If I'm getting the numbers right, I think it is 9 into 10, but yeah, that is just beautiful to watch one car go through, but seeing 2 cars go through, yeah, that is very amusing, and congrats really to both guys. They did really well in the race, and that Red Bull car is outstanding. I think in Baku, they're going to have a huge advantage. Biggest takeaway still is their top speed is insanity. Insanity. I heard somewhere a rumor that they were down like 10 horsepower. I don't believe that to be true. They were just struggling a little bit, and this track kind of like showed their weaknesses, which is their downforce somewhat in slow speed corners. As for Mercedes, my surprise of the race, and Lewis Hamilton and George Russell had outstanding races. George, oh man, what a beast to go into that first corner ahead of Max, and pretty drastically as well. And they had a good strategy keeping both those two in front. It would have made for a very amusing race if the two of them were actually able to keep Max behind and we didn't have the safety cars and red flag. Still, fond of this race. It was great, and so many things happened really well for all teams. But for Mercedes in general, big performance gain. And the thing that I can really notice is their top speed was better, so they shred some drag with that setup that they had. And they were just as fast as Aston Martin in the medium speed corners and slow speed corners. So this Mercedes car will be quick going on for these next races to come, and I'm excited to see what they can bring with these huge upgrades soon to come. And that's it for my biggest takeaways and analysis. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.